today's topic is going to be a little heavy, but we're going to keep it light. We're going to keep it meaningful, but we are going to talk about death. The key topic today is that no one dies alone. There is something called spiritual witnessing, and it is powerful and beautiful, and almost everyone does it, and most people don't even know they're doing it. And I want to describe it today, give you some examples, because every time I teach this, someone says, holy crap, that's what was happening to me. That's what happened to me 3 years ago or X number of years ago when blah, blah, blah happened. And I'm like, yeah, blah, blah, blah was awesome. That's really cool. Again, a little bit heavy on some of these, but I'll cover all of it so we understand it. And whether you are watching me on YouTube or listening to me on audio, however you digest your delicious digital data, I want to leave you with the understanding of our spiritual connectedness on a new level, and that is through spiritual witnessing. So I'm going to teach about it. You know what? I'll share my example, even though it's kind of dark, but I'll share my example of how I just didn't discover, but how I learned about spiritual witnessing. And then we'll head over to story time, where I'm going to tell you the most powerful one I've ever heard. And we'll wrap up this session talking to my guide, Peter, see what messages he has about the energies coming through. So, all right, let's do this. Just a quick little blip here to talk about GCP. If you've been following me for a while, you're probably using GCP at this point, but this is something I talk about in the podcast quite frequently, and people always ask me, how do I learn how to do GCP? I have been teaching this practice for free for well over 15 years. This is what I would say. Ground Clear Protect, which is what it stands for, makes the lows in your life a little less low and the highs a whole lot higher. It is an energetic practice that, when done daily, is a game changer. Try it for 7 days and see what I'm talking about. And again, it's completely free. So look for my top 5 intuitive tools course, which is a free course. And the very first video in there is GCP. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to the podcast or the YouTube channel. Again, depending on if you're watching this or listening. If you're new, chances are very good you landed on this because you are either one or all of the above, going through a spiritual awakening, recently have gone through a spiritual awakening, connecting into the new energies that are coming into this world right now. And you're curious. You kind of want to know what the heck is going on. And this video, this audio is going to be one of those. This is going to be one of those where it's like, okay, here's what this is. And my hope is, because almost everyone I know has been a spiritual witness at some point, whether they're aware of it or not. I've taught tens of thousands of people over the years, and I would say most people are consciously aware of a spiritual witnessing experience once they know what it is. Maybe like once a year, right? Or once every couple of years. And then we have empaths who this happens to a little bit more frequently. And this will all make sense. All right, let's get into the outline of it. Spiritual witnessing is your spirit showing up for another person's spirit when that person's body is dying and they're leaving this earth and they're going to go return home. If we start from the very beginning of a life, we are on the other side before we come down, and there's no division. There's no physical bodies dividing souls from one another. That happens down here. We come down here, but we don't immediately isolate ourselves. We hang out with a mama for a while, which is actually just a beautiful thing. And then we come into this world. We are not alone. That maternal person who's physically, and I mean, wow, it's just amazing every time I think about it, right? Done it twice. It's powerful. But that physical body is created and the spirit is carried and then comes into this world. You are not alone when you come in. You're also not supposed to be alone when you leave. But because of the physicality of this place, there are going to be times where people are physically alone when they die, but they're not spiritually alone. Because others who are still here, to be specific, living people who are still here, will show up for that person so that person is not alone in spirit as they exit the earth. Okay, that's the most basic description I can give you. And it's going to be through examples that we're going to be like, okay, this is starting to make sense. So let's start with the easiest one, and that's in the dream state. And I'm going to talk about one of those during story time. Again, it's the most powerful one I've ever heard, and is deeply meaningful. But let's talk about dream state. Okay, focus bow. Here we go. When we have a dream, first off, that is very realistic, I'm going to put this in a larger category here. When we have a dream that's very realistic, the kind of dream that you can't forget, you wake up and you're like, I swear I was there. It feels like it really happened. That is a spiritual dream. Perhaps you're communicating with your deceased grandfather that passed years back, or perhaps you're talking to one of your guides, or you're having some sort of an experience about yourself. That is a spiritual dream. You really are in the spiritual realms, and you come back and you're remembering the actual experience you had. Now, occasionally, you might have a dream that's very realistic, and you don't know anybody in it, and you have no idea why you had this dream. So let's say you have a dream about a farmer who is in a field working a large piece of equipment, and something tragically goes wrong, and the farmer loses their life. Maybe in this dream, you just met the farmer and had a conversation with them. Maybe you didn't even see the scene unfold, even though that's what really happened. Maybe you didn't even see the scene unfold. Maybe you just met a strange, sweet guy who's, elderly, and he's a farmer, and he tells you a few things about himself. And then you wake up the next morning and you're like, why did I have a weird dream that's super realistic about a guy named Bill who's just the nicest guy in the world? We were standing in a field. I think he was a farmer. Makes no sense to me whatsoever. In reality, what's happened is you were there in the middle of the night. So Bill's probably on the other side of the globe, right? But you were there in the middle of the night, being present, because he was alone in that field when he passed. And again, you might not see the actual passing or what happened. All you're doing is showing up soul to soul. Your soul showed up and chatted with Bill's soul. So Bill wasn't alone, and then Bill could exit and go home. That's a dream state. Now, what does this look like if you have a spiritual witnessing moment during the day? It looks like an intuitive moment. It looks like an intuitive moment that feels, for just a brief second, like you were there. Think of it like this. Think of it like extreme remote viewing. That sounds like a t-shirt. Extreme remote viewing. I just give this image of somebody on a t-shirt like parkour. All right, here we go. Most all of us know about remote viewing. The US government years back did testing on it very successfully. And in essence, remote viewing is letting go of time and space and having your spiritual body be able to be somewhere else. And in that moment, you can feel things, see things. But remote viewing typically doesn't have a very strong feeling of actually experiencing being there. That can be the case for a small number of remote viewers, where when they remote view, they're there like it's real. That's possible, 100%. But for most of us, when we remote view, we kind of know we're like in a house, and we kind of know that we're going downstairs, and we kind of know, and it's clear, but it's not crystal clear. And in this situation, you might have a flash, middle of the day, you might just flash of intuition pop through your head, where all of a sudden you know something so solidly. Or you see someone not in solid form in front of you, but it just flashes through your mind, where you see somebody's face and you're like, that was so quick and so real, for just a brief moment. Now here, I'm going to add a little sprinkle in here of goodness. When you do remote viewing, again, there's still hangs on this kind of feeling of detachment, like that you're witnessing something, but it's just something that's there. When it's spiritual witnessing and it happens, there tends to be an emotion behind it that happens at the same time. And it tends to be Bill's emotion. So you could feel even relief, but you could feel sadness. You could feel fear. You could feel confusion. A lot of different feelings happen for people right before they pass, especially if it's not an instant passing. And you might feel that. And that's typically a sign that it was a spiritual witnessing, is that you were sharing it. When it comes to having this happen during the day, because you've never met Bill, you don't know who he is, you don't recognize him, you have no idea why you're standing in the middle of a field when you're actually in an apartment on the 20th floor of a skyscraper in the middle of a city. You're like, none of this is making sense to me. This might be spiritual witnessing. You might be showing up for Bill, and I want to put an emphasis on this, because this is not you putting on like a cape or a superhero thing at all. There's probably many spirits with Bill when Bill passes. And I don't mean spirits that are spirit guides or people on the other side. They're always around. They're always hanging out with us, right? It's a gang. But I mean people in spirit, the spirits of living people who are in this existence. Think of them like the exit crew, right? Like, we're bye-bye, thanks for flying with us, right? It's a touch point as you go out that door. And you don't know the flight attendant, but they're saying goodbye. It's a touch point. It's a pleasant, most of the time, touch point where they're like, thank you for flying with us. Or they say, thanks for flying with us. But this is not the case with spiritual witnessing. This is all about love. It's all about being present and having that spirit who's about to leave their body to cross over to the other side not be alone. This can happen also in real life. And I don't mean real life, I mean like in the physical world. I've heard a story of someone who was driving, took a wrong turn, and on a road that wasn't very well traveled, came across somebody that had gotten in an accident minutes before they arrived. The car hit the ditch or hit a tree or something of that sort, but it was dramatic enough that the person was actively dying, the person who got into the accident, and they were alone in the car. So they called 911, then they attended to the person, and the person passed before help could get there, which is tragic and it's sad and it's so hard. But that person took a wrong turn spiritually. Like, it was a spiritual feel of, why did I take that wrong turn? Oh, this is why. So there can be spiritual witnessing moments that are person to person, where one person in an odd place at an odd time runs into somebody and now they're not alone. But most of that's very rare, but most of spiritual witnessing is done through spirit form. Let me share with you mine. And I'll try to be descriptive enough that you can get a feel of what one of these situations might feel like, because they come up randomly and you're like, what the heck was that? I don't understand. And here we are, you and me, chatting right now, and you're like, oh, that's what it was. That's what it was. Okay, so here's how I stumbled on this concept and understanding it, mostly because I ended up talking to Peter about it and saying, okay, can you explain to me why I can't let this go? Now, trigger warning, this one is a little bit more of a darker experience, not pleasant, but the world is light and dark, and things like this sadly do happen. But I was sitting there, I think I was in a hotel, and I was just hanging out in the hotel room, if I recall, and all of a sudden, I felt like I was in a barn. I could smell the barn. I could smell, it just was kind of a little bit musty. It was a little dimly lit. I guess barns don't always prioritize bright lights, but I was in the barn, and the thing that was so odd is I felt like I was there for a split second. This all happened in a matter of maybe 3 seconds, and I thought, that is strange. Now stick with me on this, because I do crossing over work, so it kind of paralleled it. Here we go. All of a sudden I'm in a barn, and up ahead of me is a woman, and there's a post in the middle of the barn, and sadly she's tied to the post. And next thing I know, I didn't even like walk up to her. It was just, I saw her 3-4 feet away, and then I was next to her. And then I could hear her just take a sigh of relief, and then she passed away. And then it was over. It was that fast. I knew she was tied to the post. I knew something horrid had happened. I did not know what. And I will just say, like, I could smell. There's just smells. And I'm not usually someone that has a strong sense of smell with intuition. Okay, so here I am sitting in this hotel room. 3 seconds, it couldn't have been more than 3 seconds. And I'm like, that is the most bizarre. Now, the crossing over work I do is important to bring up because I use remote viewing with crossing over work. And many times, many times, I'll talk to a spirit and they will show to me what happened to them. They will present to me. They'll say, hey, look, I was in this barn and it was really scary and then I passed. But it's like a they're like showing me what happened because they're already past and they're in the in-between and they're struggling with their transition. That's the work I do. I've been doing that for 18 years. And that's very common. Or somebody's talking about being in the hospital when they pass, who was sitting next to them. These types of things come through readings and crossing over work all the time, but they're always talking about something that happened in the past, somebody that's passing a while back, but not in the moment. So I let this go thinking it was just a really strong crossing over moment. And it starts to bubble up, and it's just kind of like nagging at me. It's like there's something I don't know about this and I don't know why. And it wasn't even the curiosity of who this person was. Typically, I'm really curious, right? I mean, we're human. That's what we want to know. Like, who was that? And I finally started talking to my guide. And I said, and at this point, I had really strong guide communication. And I said, what is this? And that's when he said, it's spiritual witnessing. It happens to everybody, happens all over all traditions all over the globe. It happens in different ways. And that's when he explained to me that the reason it felt very real, it was just a flash, and I could actually feel like the emotion in that moment is because it was spiritual witnessing. So what this means is, in that moment, there was a woman who was passing, and me and others showed up to be present with her in our spirit form, even though we're still here in living bodies. Our spirit showed up, much like remote viewing, remember, because there's no time and space when it comes to intuition and spirit. So we showed up to be present in that barn so she could exit. And in that case, it wasn't so much fear, it was relief that I felt. It was her recognizing, okay, I'm not alone. And she passed. There's a lot that happens in the death process that I guess people would say is like subconscious or whatnot, but there's a lot that happens. Even if somebody passes instantly, your spirit knows the process that it's walking through, and there's an awareness. There's a lot of awareness. The closer you get to passing and crossing over to go home to the other side, the more your spirit has awareness. For example, as you've probably heard, in hospice, hospice patients will see loved ones. They'll communicate with loved ones in their room as if they're sitting right there. I was visiting my grandmother who passed, who, by the way, I didn't open up intuitively until after she passed, because she was the crazy lady that showed up in my living room, scared the crap out of me. And then I wanted to investigate it, and now here I am with you talking about intuition. But so I wasn't open when my grandmother was in hospice and passing. I wasn't open at all, and I was standing next to her bed. Total skeptic I was. Yes, I was. And she starts getting in a fight with her sister. They were inseparable. It's a long story. They were troublemakers too. Just delicious stories. But she starts getting in a fight with her sister, who, by the way, is deceased. So I'm just thinking, okay, Grandma, you're having a, it's not right. I didn't say anything because, that would be mean or rude. But she was kind of getting in this just sort of like fun little catty fight, not a bad fight. They had little catty fights all the time. They bickered is what you could say. It's just bickering. So even if somebody is passing quickly, there's still going to be spiritual moments that are happening before the passing. And one of these spiritual moments is spiritual witnessing. So, do we have to be aware of when we are being a spiritual witness for someone? No, you don't. Are you? Most of the time, no. But we're all connected. This is the message. The only thing that disconnects you from me and me from you is that we're in these bodies. We got into them on purpose. I like the one I picked. In all seriousness, we picked this to be isolated enough Our spirit's not isolated, but isolated enough that we can have these linear time experiences. But our spirit remains unlimited. And in the end, we are all connected. And we don't grab on it, we don't pull, but we step back into that interconnectedness before we die. And those around us, or on the other side of the globe, or anywhere, will show up to be present so that nobody dies alone. Okay, I have a story for you. It's a little breezy out here, but I want to take you with me. You want to see my dogs? They're like, oh, why can't I come out here? Anyway, I want to share with you this story because, like I said, it was one of the most powerful examples of spiritual witnessing I've ever heard. And it just has sat with me over the years. So I have a good friend who shall be unnamed, but she's that friend that when you get a call from her and she's had a dream, you listen, right? So she's highly intuitive. And she contacted me and she said, I had a dream. And I said, okay, I'm not in it, right? Like, don't warn me about anything. She said, no, but this one was really upsetting and I'm trying to understand it. Now, side note, this story is going to be an example of sometimes it's hard to be a spiritual witness, but I want you to hold on to the fact that you're doing good work. If you consciously have an experience of spiritual witnessing and it's a little tough to swallow or it's hard to carry, I'm sorry for that, but it means that you have the strength and power to show up for another person in a beautiful way. Okay, back to the story. So I'm on the phone with her and she said, I had this dream. I said, tell me all about it. She said, it's not just the dream, it's this other thing that happened as well. She says, the dream was she was standing in a front yard. She was looking at a house and everything was closed and she didn't see anything, but she knew that there was a woman laying behind the door of this house, like trying to get out the front door and couldn't. And I said, well, that sounds uncomfortable. She said, yeah, I was. That's the thing. She said, I was really uncomfortable. I felt like, I just felt like I was sad. Like I couldn't move my feet. I couldn't reach her. And all I wanted to do was reach her. All I wanted to do was get to her. I said, okay, sorry you went through that. And she's like, there's more. There's more. So she wakes up this morning that she had this dream. And upon waking up, she gets up, she does her usual routine. She gets her kids ready for school and she's going to drive them to school. Well, something's blocked off. And so she ends up going a different route and comes up against another block of firefighters, police, the whole thing. And she goes to turn only to see that there had been a fire in a house near her. She is very well connected and she found out that there was a fire in that house. There was a woman alone. It had happened that night. It was what's considered like a smoke fire. I don't recall exactly what it was called, but it's the kind of fire where it's not big flames, but the house does fill up with smoke. And they had finally opened that front door and she had been laying there deceased. So the woman had made it to the front door, but didn't have the strength to open the front door to get out. Very difficult story. So now my friend is saying, what the actual F? And I'm like, I know. She's like, I don't want this. I don't want this. This means I was there, right? And I said, yes, in your sleep, your spirit showed up for her to be present. And she said, well, I didn't fix it. I didn't save her. And I said, I understand. It's because that's what was supposed to happen. She's like, I don't want this memory. I don't want this thought. And I know, I understand, but here's the deal. This friend is the type of person who would do anything for anyone, even if it was difficult for her. And I said, so that's your soul, that's your spirit. And you were able to be present. And for some reason, it was a house right down the road. And for some reason, You ended up getting, diverted in a different direction. So you were made aware of this situation. And for some reason, you were made aware that this is a situation that really happened because you spiritual witnessed. You were there. You were present with her. So we sat with it for a little bit longer, and talked for a while about how it can be hard to carry that. But I said, if it was in real life, you would still go through the effort of trying to get through that front door for her. And that would be hard to carry as well. So that's one of the most powerful examples I've ever heard. It moved me, and it reminded me of how we need to constantly always be showing up for other people, taking care of ourselves always. But it reminded me of how important it is to show up for each other. If you've listened to a couple of the podcast episodes, you may have noticed that I don't have any advertising in them. And I do this on purpose because my reason for being here with you is to talk about your intuition, to bring it into your day-to-day life, because everyone is intuitive. Everyone is intuitive. I've been teaching people how to hone their intuition, how to access their already natural, strong intuition for well over 15 years all over the globe. It is my calling. It's my job to remind you of how incredible you are, how intuitive you are, and say, here's how you open up that intuitive channel of yours that is already super strong. I've been teaching this through a course called the Sage Method. So you might hear me reference it. It's a 7-week development course. And that, along with free tools and a whole bunch of other really great stuff, I keep it all in one place. It's at thesagemethod.com. So go over there, see what you're pulled to, and start honing your intuition. Okay, let's chat with Peter, right? Peter has been my guide for a very long time, for years and years and years. You gonna come talk to Peter? He focuses on the energies that are around us, what's going on, and what you can expect just for yourself, or for your community, or for fill in the blank. And I'm gonna connect with him. We're gonna chat. We're gonna see what comes through, and whatever he says, I will share with you. So it's my job to tell you what I see, feel, and hear. Okay, I'm gonna be quiet for a minute, do GCP, and then let's see what comes through. Okay, hello. You gonna join me? Do you see Peter? Do you see Peter? Yeah, you with me? Okay, here we go. Yes, so as of the time of this taping, it is toward the end of November 2025. And there is a readjustment of feminine and masculine energy that's very big. He's been talking about this recently in sacred space sessions in the community. And this is very powerful. However, he wants to talk about it on an individual case right now, because most things that come through with him, like I said, individual, relationship, community, global, they all kind of resonate because we're all in the same energy. So, but on a personal level is how he wants to talk about it today. When it comes to your role in your passion, what you love to do in almost every one of your relationships, there's going to be an adjustment and a balance shift. There's going to be changes from either more masculine to more feminine, or more feminine to more masculine. There's going to be an adjustment. You're in the adjustment. You're in it. Okay. For some, not for all, but for some, that's rough. That's rough. And his biggest message coming through, if you're going through an adjustment of energies, masculine and feminine, within yourself or within a relationship, he just wants you to hang in there, because the outcome is very good. It's very good. For example, you work at a job that you've always wanted to shift into a different focus with your work, and you're going to get that shift now. He's talking about the next 3 weeks. So we're in the end of November. So I would say between now and mid-December, he's talking about the next 3 weeks, these shifts, these balances, going from one side to the other, and then just adjusting into the perfect balance. The adjustment period can be, he's saying bumpy and difficult, but it can also be anticipatory. It can be what's going to happen, what's going to work out. And his hopes for you today is that if you know that you are going through a balancing process, you know to ride that out. It's one thing to be going through any sort of a transition about ourselves, about a relationship, work, it can be school, it can be anything. It's difficult to be in a transition and almost like not know that there's the other side, like I'm going to get to the other side of this. And he's saying that the other side of this balancing situation for you is that balance you've been looking for. You will be doing more at work that you want to do, less that you don't want to do. In the relationship, less fighting, more bonding, more connection. Within yourself, less stress, less anxiety, more balance and confidence. He says balance, confidence, and comfort. Okay, that's quite a gathering. So within yourself, when this calms and the balance comes to be, you will have that, exactly that, more balance, more confidence, and more comfort. For example, he's throwing out the example of somebody that was a recovering people pleaser. They're now oddly more comfortable speaking up for themselves and prioritizing themselves. And they don't feel the guilt that's come with trying to do that time and time again in the past. That's a great example. Also, an example, if this is a rebalancing of the masculine and feminine energies between a couple, between two people, and it can be two women, two men, a man and a woman. It's the masculine and feminine energies that we're talking about, not male and female, right? Not, a man and a woman, but masculine and feminine energies. So if those are being rebalanced for you in a relationship, that's going to have an outcome, he says, of seeing each other on a new level, on a deeper level, and being more present in that. Okay, sadly, sometimes balancing the energy between relationships can also be ending it for you to regain your personal balance. So what do we have? We have the next 3 weeks. We're looking at masculine and feminine energies balancing and shifting into a state of equilibrium and confidence and comfort and balance. And in that process is going to be the jagged ups and downs, the moments of, I don't know what's going on, where is this going to go, how is this going to be, the what ifs. And this is the message to remind you that there's a process happening. There's a process happening. He says you can even use that as your statement. Okay? I'm okay right now. I'm okay right now. And there's a process happening. This is difficult, but there's a process happening. I'm in it. I'm in it. There's going to be an end to this process. It's going to be a good end. I'm walking through the process. He then shows you walking up to a door. So there's a long hallway behind you. The hallway was the process you went through. Got it. And he's got you at the end of the hallway, ready to open the door and walk through to what you want. This tells me that you're on the tail end of this. So when it comes to the balancing of these energies, which makes sense because globally there's a huge influx of feminine energy to balance out the masculine and feminine energies, and that just happened. But when you're in the process of this, thinking about, okay, what areas of my life is he talking about? Think in terms of the one that you've been trying to balance for a long time. Long hallway, long time, and he wants you to know you're at the door. So keep going. Keep going through that process. Okay, I'm just sitting with him to see if there's anything else coming through. I do see a couple little animal energies. So if you have animal energy that you connect with it on a deeper level at this time, and it will help you balance through this process to get you through that final door to the destination you want, which is balanced. And comfort and confidence. It's good stuff. So any kind of animal energy that you can call in right now would be really, really helpful. Okay. All right. That's our message from Peter this week. I'll see you next week.
This podcast is brought to you by the SAGE Method, the most comprehensive and down-to-earth intuitive development training available. Is this your year? Is it finally your time to increase your intuition, bring in more abundance, and experience the bliss you deserve? If yes, then join thousands of students across the world for a 7-week journey to uncover your natural, beautiful, and strong intuition. Visit us at thesagemethod.com for more information.